Greetings, friends. You are on the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we are going to break down the situation on the Ukrainian front as of November 13, 2025. A lot has happened. Each event is quite significant, so let's get straight to it. We'll start with the line of contact. Over the course of today, so many high-profile episodes have taken place that there is no sense in delaying the analysis any further. First of all, we go to the Zaporizhzhia sector, more precisely the eastern Zaporizhzhia direction, where Russian forces continue advancing toward the town of Gulyapol. As you can see, the map has once again undergone noticeable changes. At this point, it is being updated here almost daily, and the changes affect very large areas of territory, if I can put it that way. This is what the map looked like back on November 8th, and at that time it seemed that the distance to Gulyapol would still take at least several months to cover. On the eastern Zaporizhzhia axis, it is actually more logical to measure the distance between major settlements, not in kilometers, but in the amount of time Russian troops need to cover it, in days, weeks, or even months. But in reality, everything turned out to be much more dynamic. After the fall of the Uspanovka and Poltavka fortified areas, Russian units began actively pushing westward. Every new day brought changes to the map, and changes of a kind that had previously seemed impossible. Russian troops were pushing several kilometers deep into the Ukrainian layered defenses in a single move. All of this continued right up until November 12th, when the first official statement was made. The Ukrainian command had decided to withdraw its forces. In other words, it was announced that Ukrainian units were leaving Ravnopol and Yablokovo, pulling back closer to Gulyapol to more advantageous lines. Shortly after that, the maps were updated accordingly. Most of the territory of these settlements was marked as having come under the control of Russian forces, according to several independent mapping services. However, despite this, by the end of November 13th, we still leave these areas in the so-called grey zone, since not a single authoritative pro-Russian cartographer, military source, or the Ministry of Defense has yet officially confirmed a full mop-up. It is obvious, though, that the clearing of these settlements is either being completed or is already finished, and most likely tomorrow official statements will appear. But the fact remains, the situation on the eastern Zaporizhzhia axis has changed dramatically. If the map really reflects the ground truth, then the distance between the forward positions of Russian troops and Gulyapol itself is now less than 6 kilometers. For this type of combat, this is effectively no distance at all. Russian drones operating from the areas of Ravnopol and Yablokovo can now freely enter the airspace over Gulyapol. Moreover, Russian units are gaining the ability to establish full fire control over the supply routes, and these are already the first steps toward forming the Gulyapol pocket. Some pro-Ukrainian analysts suggest that the Russian advance may not go directly toward Gulyapol from the northeast, but rather swing westward, toward Varvarovka and the R85 highway, which previously connected Gulyapol with Pokrovskoye. Although, in reality, there is little point in saying that this road still connects anything. Today, the Vostok grouping and Telegram channels affiliated with it published material, confirmed by the Ministry of Defense, stating that Danilovka, a settlement lying directly along the R85, is under full Russian control. The road was physically cut by Russian forces. A video was published showing airstrikes, artillery work, drone operations, and the clearing of the settlement itself. In the final frames, you can see soldiers raising Russian flags in different parts of Danilovka. This footage, together with the official report from the Ministry of Defense, allows us to correct the map here once and for all. This is what the sector looked like yesterday, on November 12th. And this is how it looks today. The advance is indeed substantial. Since the R85 highway has been cut, reinforcements from Pokrovskoye and Mezhovaya can no longer move south toward Gulyapol. And apparently, from now on, Russian units will begin to move further down along this road. First toward Nechaevka, then Radostnoye, then Dobropolye, Varvarovka, and only after that toward Gulyapol itself. It is clear that 3 armies are operating on this axis at once, the 5th, the 36th, and the 29th. The 5th will probably continue its movement from the northeast of Gulyapol, the 36th may begin to pivot south, and the 29th will keep pushing in the direction of Aristopol and Velikomikhailovka. According to the latest adjustments, the Russian side already controls part of Aristopol. Different sources give different figures, from half of the settlement to most of it. But the key point is that fighting is already ongoing inside, and it is becoming obvious that the Zaporizhzhia front is holding on to its last supports and will finally collapse as soon as Gulyaipol passes under the control of Russian forces. As we have already said earlier, judging by the dynamics, this is no longer a matter of many long months. Most likely, it is an issue to be resolved within 2025. Now we move on to the Dnepropetrovsk direction. There is plenty of news here as well. The 29th Army continues storming Aristopol, which is part of Velikomikhailovka, and consolidating its positions in this area. It is logical that from these lines, the Russian side will try to force the Volchya River in order to seize a bridgehead north of it. If we look more broadly, activity is visible not only around Aristopol and Velikomikhailovka. Fighting has intensified along the Ivanovka-Gavrilovka line. Some cartographers indicate that Russian units have managed to take control of the forested area west of Ivanovka, and it appears that Russian forces are trying to envelop both Gavrilovka and Velikomikhailovka from two sides, creating a pincer movement. The problem is that both of these points are located on the Ukrainian side of the Volkhya, and river crossings are always a difficult task. At the same time, Russian troops are improving their positions along the Filia, Novopavlovka line. Here, the offensive is developing across fields and shelter belts. Russian units are gradually pushing Ukrainian forces back toward Novopavlovka and further toward Mezhevaya, where Russian drones and FPV operators are constantly active. In the published footage, you can see strikes on Ukrainian equipment in Mezhevaya, including communication assets used by FPV drone operators. New data is also coming in. Further west along the railway line leading to Novopodgorodnoye and the Mezhevaya settlement cluster, additional Russian advances have been noted. Not long ago, the Ministry of Defense announced the capture of Molodetskoye, and now adjustments are being made further west, already on the territory of the Dnepropetrovsk region. Overall, it would be more accurate to call this the Pavlograd direction, because all these groupings are ultimately moving toward Pavlograd. The distance still remaining is large, but given the current pace, we may be talking about either late spring or early autumn of 2026. Next, we shift to the area of Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. The Mirnograd-Pokrovsk urban agglomeration. The map has changed here again. This is what it looked like yesterday on November 12th. Today, the adjustments are much more serious. Russian forces are increasing pressure all along the eastern perimeter of Mirnograd, from the south, the northeast, and the east. Neutral mapping resources and pro-Russian sources alike are reporting advances from different directions. And judging by this entire array of data, we can draw a simple conclusion. The defensive lines of Mirnograd have been broken. The only factor that still prevents Russian troops from fully clearing Mirnograd and the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration is, in fact, the unwillingness of Ukrainian units to capitulate. Although, I remind you, earlier this week, there was already an episode on the southern outskirts of Mirnograd, when, according to preliminary reports, around 25 Ukrainian servicemen decided to surrender. Apparently, behind the scenes, there are ongoing contacts with the remaining Ukrainian garrison. However, it seems that the Ukrainian contingent still hopes for a breakout, counting on the possibility that north of the city, in the areas of Rodinskoye, Suketskoye, Zatyshe and Krasny Liman, they might manage to punch through the Russian lines and open a corridor for withdrawal. But time is running out rapidly, and the defenders' resources are also nearing exhaustion. Even if the Ukrainian side manages to break through a corridor for a short period, they will still inevitably run into Russian positions north of Mirnograd. In other words, any such success would be completely nullified. Meanwhile, Russian units continue advancing along the Sergeyevka, Grushino-Grushina line. This information is confirmed by all sources, pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian, and neutral alike. Russian forces are moving north, aiming to break this unified defensive hub of Grushino, Sergeyevka into separate segments. The idea is to dismantle the defensive system into isolated parts and then deal with each one individually. In addition, we have objective control footage from the northeastern outskirts of Pokrovsk. Russian troops are gradually encircling the settlement of Rovnoye. These materials were published by units of the Ukrainian 38th Marine Brigade, which are attempting to slow down the Russian advance in the northeastern sector of Pokrovsk and in the southern part of Rovnoye. This episode clearly indicates that, judging by the visual evidence, the entire northeastern part of the city has effectively fallen under Russian control. There are also fresh map adjustments along the Rodinskoye-Fyodorovka line. All recently published video shows Ukrainian FPV drone strikes on Russian positions, and these episodes indirectly confirm that the Russian army confidently controls the central and southern sectors of Rodinskoye, as well as part of Zaporizhzhia. Ukrainian forces occasionally attempt counterattacks, but the pace of these actions is extremely slow and does not significantly affect the front line. New information is coming in regarding ongoing fighting around the Shakovo area. Updated adjustments, confirmed by both neutral and pro-Russian cartographers, have appeared for this direction. This is what the area looked like on November 12th, and here is how it looks on the 13th. The distance from the forward Russian positions to Shakovo has now shrunk to approximately 2 kilometers. Theoretically, the Ukrainian side could attempt to unblock this area, but the presence of a Russian strongpoint in the northwestern part of the combat zone makes this task extremely difficult. Russian units continue pressing on the Shakovo salient from both the south and the east simultaneously. Now we move to the Seversk-Lyman direction. A large number of important updates were published here today as well. Pro-Russian sources and independent mapping services have released a whole set of adjustments, so many that we have not even managed to transfer them all to the map yet. According to these reports, by the end of November 13th, Russian troops had fully cleared an entire network of Ukrainian strongpoints east of Seversk. In other words, Seversk is practically prepared for a storming operation, which will very likely begin in the coming days. Furthermore, some unusual adjustments have appeared, which we have left pending for additional verification. Several pro-Russian cartographers have marked a radical change in the front line in the area of Drobyshevo, Novosyolovka, and Yarovaya. According to these claims, Russian units or sabotage groups allegedly managed to break through the Ukrainian defenses along the Novosyolovka-Dibrova line and reach the area of Prishib. There were even reports of a possible crossing of the Seversky Donets, Oskol section near Nitrius, and an advance toward Prishib. If this information is confirmed, it would be an event of almost unbelievable magnitude. We will discuss it in detail tomorrow. Perhaps geolocation evidence will appear. But what is already clear is this: the isolation of Lyman continues. The city is effectively cut off from the Seversk side, cut off from the Drobyshevo side, and the pressure is increasing. On the North Kupiansk axis, fighting continues around the key crossing points. Ukrainian forces keep trying to evacuate vehicles and personnel across the Oskol River, but every route is under complete Russian fire control. Every attempt by a Ukrainian truck or vehicle to enter this zone turns into a game similar to Russian roulette. Except in this version, 5 out of 6 chambers contain live rounds. The situation for Ukrainian forces in this area is becoming increasingly hopeless. The Russian army continues advancing slowly but steadily, although no official map updates have been made for this sector yet. In the northeastern part of Kharkiv region, the key news comes from Volchansk and the entire Volchansk agglomeration. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Sever, North grouping, officially announced the full capture of Sinelnikovo. No footage of flag raising has yet been published, but the map adjustments have already been made. This is a highly significant development because Sinelnikovo is the second settlement on the Ukrainian side of the Volchya River to come under Russian control, the first being part of Volchansk itself. The next Russian objective, judging by the operational picture, will be the further encirclement of the settlement of Volchi, pushing Ukrainian units out and tightening the noose around the area. After securing these positions, a new avenue opens, a strike toward Belai Kolodez. And once operations begin from Belai Kolodez, an entirely new phase of the campaign in the northeastern Kharkiv region will commence. That's all for now, dear friends. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave your likes, and all the best to you.